coming to you live today from the East Coast and the West Coast and somewhere in between where we're at. And we're going to be talking about a very, very important subject. And I am so excited to welcome Courtney Marchesani to our show today because I believe you are going to sit back and love this conversation that we're going to have. So go ahead and make you coffee or tea or whatever you drink and enjoy because you are in for a ride. And so let me tell you a little bit about Courtney. So the first
Okay.
thing that is really important to know is that Courtney is the author of a book titled Four Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. So if you're not a sensitive, it's a great book to read to understand the sensitive people in your life. But if you are a sensitive, this can actually save your life. The subtitle is Embrace the Science of Sensitivity, Heal Anxiety and Relationships, and Connect Deeply with Your World. And to a regular person, that may sound like just words, but the truth is, once you have that information, that is really, really a possibility. So, but that's not all that Courtney does. She's also an author. She's also a health coach, a yoga teacher, a passionate advocate of sustainability. And she received a BA at the University of Montana and began her successful career working in mental health services. While working as a social worker and lobbying for homeless programs in Washington state, a dramatic turning point in Courtney's life came after preventing a fire in the Capitol Hill, Seattle brownstone in 2002. And she sensed the fire before it happened. I think that would be a life changer for anybody. After the experience, she began a relentless search of understanding the power of intuition, and she shifted her personal and professional focus from researching and expanding on the works of pioneers like Russell Targ, medical intuitive Carolyn Meese, and the teachings of lucid dreaming. Now she's a coach, a teacher, a health advocate with a master's degree in mind body medicine. And she spent the last 20 years passionately exploring the research gap that exists between what medical science believes and what the gifted sensitive feels. She provides an enlightening ride through early to now emerging science on sensitivity and the abilities of the highly sensitive with interpretation of what this means for you today, which is really, really important. In her book, Courtney paints a clear picture of how to claim your specialness for yourself and for the good of mankind, but also how to live with and adopt for your tendencies so that you can embrace them and thrive. So, having worked with hundreds of sensitive clients and patients, she clearly defines the strength and the drawbacks of having each of these four types of gifts. And I'm going to mention the four types of gifts, and that way you can see if you belong to any one of them. So, one of them is empathy and intuition, vision, and expression. And those are the four sensitive ways that you can express your sensitivity. Courtney intuitive pursuits continue to shape the focus of her studies, writing of her professional career. From her research and experiential approach, she designed multiple intelligence theories of sensory intelligence, and she was named in 2017 as Writers Workshop Award winner for her book, The Four Gifts of the Highly Sensitive, which I'm not at all surprised because the book is totally an eye opener. So, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today, Courtney.
Thank you, Tippy. I mean, I'm listening to all that just going, wow, that's so much. It's a lifetime already lived and working so hard and I'm sensitive myself, right? So I get caught up sometimes when I'm listening to all this because you're really seeing all the hard work that's been involved. It's been a lot of hard work.
Right. And I have to tell you, though, I do have a special soft spot for Italians. I grew up with Italians in Brooklyn, and I just love that community. It's just so
Yeah, me too.
warm and loving and embracing, and never mind the food, because I probably gained 20 pounds just hanging out with them. But it's just such a special place in my heart.
Well, I have to tell you, there was an early study done. Now, I don't have the footnotes on this, but I came across it. They did this study of Italian people and their own intuition, precognitive dreams, their level of being in tune and in touch. And they scored higher when they did this intuitive study, that the Italians had more precognitive experiences. And so, Italians are in the flow, they're in touch with things.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I think, part of the culture, because I think a lot of kids that are sensitive have that bit out of them at a certain time when they're viewed
Mhm.
as weird or different, or like, like one of the things I've always heard growing up is like, oh my God, don't be so sensitive, or you're just too sensitive,
No.
or like something was wrong with that. And in the Italian
Yeah.
community, they actually embraced it as something is right with that. And maybe that's why they scored higher.
Yeah, I think that that could be true. There are other cultures that are really they champion sensitivity. The Japanese culture
Right.
definitely sees, definitely in similar to Italian culture, you have the Spanish community and South America, where there's a lot of the same type of openness and expression and feeling in the flow. I mean, in Costa Rica, they have Pura Vida. It's the pure life, the good life, being in touch. And so what we're talking about is really just being one with things, with nature, with others, connecting deeply. That is one of the sensitives like superpowers.
So yeah, I didn't know why I loved Costa Rica so much, but now that you said that, I when I got to Costa Rica, which I drove from Los Angeles to Costa Rica, it was a long journey.
Nice.
But when
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. But when I got to Costa Rica, there was something about it that I loved more than Mexico, Nicaragua, Salvador, and all the other countries that I passed. I love
Yeah.
Latinos too, but Italians are definitely first. But I love the Puerto Rican community.
If we have to do an ordering system, well, the thing I loved about Costa Rica, because I'm a deep empath, right? I'm right out there with my own sensitivity strengths. But when I was in Costa Rica, and I went there many times, I felt like the energy of the forest was so magnificent, and it was so all encompassing that I felt more alive being near to it and vibrant. I felt the vibrancy, and it almost flowed with me. Just that whole canvas of the rainforest, that whole basin in Costa Rica for me was, I just soaked it up. And I felt more energy. I was more awake. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. So Costa Rica definitely has the Pura Vida in every aspect of life. And that was something that I felt viscerally. I felt a visceral feeling and connection to the energy of life there.
I can definitely see how the forest has such a huge healing power. I wasn't at the forest. I was in Costa Rica in front of a tornado that was slowly
Oh.
erupting, and that was amazing. It was an amazing experience. You can relate
The
to that.
fire element. We were talking earlier before we set up the recording part about the elements, that you're in the elements. You got the wind, you got the
I got a
volcanoes.
forest behind me. I got thousands of pine trees all around here, and water. There's a river running through it, and the elements, when they're combined like that in one place, it's very, very intense. It's very,
Yes. Yeah.
and I love it. So the first thing I think I would love for you to define is what is a sensitive, but kind of try to combine that with, are you a sensitive, and how would you identify that? Because of the many years that it took me to find out what it meant and what it was, I could have saved so much pain, and I could have, so if someone is a sensitive, how would they know? What does that mean?
Sensitive people we're one in four, 1 in 5 of the population, so 20%, approximately 20%. And that's what's been scientifically studied. And as we've just gone through the pandemic, you get more sensitive when you're isolated. So even sensitive people, when they have to isolate, to be out of environments, to not to see, feel, and hear overwhelming amounts of sensory information coming into their mind and body, and spirit too, but mostly, for this discussion, it's mind and body. And they feel a lot of energy coming in through sounds, sights, feelings, touch, tactile information. So they feel a lot more than the general population. So that's the first layer. We feel more, we hear more, we see more, we're taking it into our mind and body and we're processing it. It's called, technically, the medical term is sensitive processing sensitivity, sensory processing sensitivity. So it's SPS. That's the clinical name for it for when you go to look for what this is. Now, it's
Sounds
not a
like a disease.
disorder.
Sounds like a, yeah. It's not a disorder.
It does sound like a disease, but it's not. It's not a disorder. And so that's the thing. It's a personality trait. That is how it's defined. Is sensitive people have this type of predisposition or personality trait. But it's more than just the personality. And that's why I wrote the book. It's more than the personality. It affects you, your body physically. It affects your mental health. It affects your emotional health. So, how does one find out? The second piece.
Right.
There is no way to know. You don't get identified in school. There's no formal process. And so oftentimes you don't know, especially children. They don't know. They have no idea, right? Because if they're
Right.
not identified by a parent who's sensitive and says, oh, you're like me, this is what you have to do to stay healthy. You don't know. And not every child is born into a sensitive family. Now, sometimes it is there's a predisposition because it is genetic, but it just depends on how sensitive you are. So you only find out you're sensitive through actually having experiences that are unique or different than other people. And you start to think, critically think in your environment, why didn't they experience this? Why don't they feel it this way? Why don't they feel the depth of this experience like I do? So not only is it experiencing information faster than other people and picking up a depth, right, which is a quality in an environment that others don't also feel. There's an emotional reaction faster. So sensitives respond emotionally much faster to that information that's coming in. And that is the deciding factor. That's how you know. When you are emotionally picking up and feeling things at a much higher magnitude to others, that's kind of how you know. That's your barometer to know you're sensitive. That's the link in the chain.
Yeah, that makes sense. So would it make sense for someone who's sensitive, who is in an environment where there's a lot of people, to try to isolate themselves or stay out of the group? Is that like a normal reaction?
It's It's a normal reaction. It's a defense mechanism. So, just like when you're little and you shy away from things that are too intense and they feel like you can't cope with it emotionally, you're going to withdraw from the room. As you grow and mature and become an adult, you're always going to have that natural defense mechanism to withdraw. Now, in my own coaching world, recommend that sensitives expose themselves gradually into those kind of environments because, like I said just a few minutes ago, if you isolate, you actually become more sensitive and you don't build resiliency. There's no resiliency happening to be in environments and feel a coping mechanism kick in that helps you hit your own natural threshold. So it's called threshold. Threshold is the clinical term for, okay, I'm in an environment, I'm at a cocktail party, and then all of a sudden the music comes on and it's blaring and somebody's talking to me and something else is happening and I feel like I'm going to have a breakdown. And that's how quick it happens because you're getting multiple streams of sensory, like top volume coming in, and you feel like you can't cope. So, yes, I always tell people to leave that environment or back away because you don't want to feel like you're going to lose it in that situation because then that just feeds into more fear about being in those situations. So I highly recommend that people go in to safe environments gradually and build your threshold over time. And it can be done. They did a study in Japan where these college students were using exercise, and the exercise and physical movement practices actually help them cope with their sensitivity. So I also tell people find your own therapeutic practice to help you build resiliency for those other environments so you can cope better.
That's great advice, and I think it could avoid a lot of pain and suffering. But there's something,
Yeah, because you don't know. If you don't know, you're going to experience pain and suffering until you can figure it out.
right, right. And that's why your book is of such importance. That's why for the world, people can be going through pain and suffering for so many years without knowing it.
I
How did
know.
you find
I know.
out?
That's why I wrote the book.
Right.
That's why I wrote the book, because I do feel like there's a lot of this work that has to be done internally. You can go see massage therapists, you can go to yoga, you know, you can go to healers and they will help you, but you really have to do the inside work to figure out and judge yourself, because it's your central nervous system, it's your mind and body, it's your spirit. And so you can get relief from outside providers and even great medical providers who are into integrative medicine, you know, like myself. There are a lot of people who do integrative medicine or complementary or alternative medicine to help with sensory issues, but it's an inside job. So you got to kind of figure out where your flow is and how to balance that and expose yourself a little bit to challenging circumstances to see how far you can push it, but without having a breakdown, not having an emotional you know, just a total come apart. And it does happen when we're pushed too far. And that's the other thing about sensitives that's important to realize is it is a lot of work. And that's why we avoid it. But sensory warnings are always there. Sensory warnings are always there because it's connected to your central nervous system. So if you're feeling vulnerable, if you're feeling strange sensations, if you're not able to sleep, if you're not able to tune out and escape from reality, your central nervous system is telling you that you need rest, restoration time, downtime. And we ignore a lot of that stuff. We ignore the sensory warnings that have always been there because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to like stop life and deal with it because it feels like it takes too much time and energy to do that. But it's worth it. It's worth it to develop a practice for yourself.
Well, it does take so much time and energy that it's exhausting sometimes. But
Yeah.
uh, I have just talked about how I think it was in 2002 that you sensed that there might be a fire and you were able to go back
Yeah.
and warn the people. And I have a question about that, which is
Yeah.
I think that's like an amazing feeling, probably when you walked away knowing that you stopped the strategy better than any high of any drug that you can ever have. But the question is, a lot of times, somebody that's sensitive will come up to a situation where they can see potential harm or potential disaster, but nobody wants to listen to them. And no matter how hard they try, they get more and more rejection. And the question is, how do you handle that? Because that pain is so overwhelming. Like, I know I feel there's going to be a fire. Can you please listen to me? And they won't let you through the door. How would you handle something like that?
I've actually had that experience many times
Yeah,
because
so you
one
could.
of the things that led me on the path to the research angle that I studied was precognitive. How does precognition work? Because I'd experienced it myself and I didn't connect it to sensitivity. I just had precognitive experiences, mainly through dreams at first, but then with the fire, it happened in real life where it unfolded in my day to day reality, waking life. So my best advice is to be able to reconcile picking those events up with needing to warn, right? Needing to warn people sometimes and doing your best, but also recognizing that things do happen and disasters do happen and they happen all the time. And you can only do what you can do and do your best. And so I've had many experiences where I saw a precognitive event that was a warning and it was a jarring thing to my psyche. Like I need to get the word out. And sometimes people just don't believe you. But then, you know, some people do believe you, and it's that gap. There's a gap, a very real time gap between seeing the future and then the reality of it happening. And so, the best advice I can give, especially to the intuitives, is that you need to be able to reconcile your part in it and do the best you can and then let it go. I saw an Air France flight crash and I was in the dream and I saw the wreckage. I've never really talked about this too much, but I did see the crash and I saw the wreckage in the water, specifically the tail section. And I was left with the images because I knew there was going to be a crash, but I didn't see a timeline, I didn't see a year. I did tell a couple people not to take Air France flights at the time, and then of course there was the crash. And so that is painful for a sensitive, but you're kind of stuck in the constraints of time and the unknown. And so you have to be good at just letting go and surrendering to what you experience. And that is a process that takes time to develop, the emotional surrendering process. And that's kind of where the spiritual piece comes into of destiny and fate and catastrophic things that do happen on the planet that we might perceive in advance before others, and what our place is in that. And maybe our place is just to perceive it and to hold space through these events and keep our heart connected to it, because that's a trauma, right? That's a big trauma. Like with the pandemic, we just went through a global trauma. Sensitives are helpful in this situation because they've already gone through it. A lot of times they've
Million
gone
times.
through trauma and have done their work.
Right.
Yeah, and they've healed, and so they can prevent. They can present a foundation of safety through these events. I believe that's what sensitives. One of the things that they do is provide societies that ballast. It's a ballast.
So basically, the only thing they can do is things like meditation, going inside, maybe
Yes.
yoga, to deal with
Yes.
knowledge that something is. I know. For me, what happens is I know what you're doing. If you do one, two, three, the results may be
Hmm.
catastrophic. But if I tell you that if you do one, two, three, you're not necessarily going to not do it, and you're not necessarily going to even want to hear what I have to say once I go past number one. And then I always have to deal with that knowledge of how much pain that person is going to be going through. And I can't do anything about it. You can't control other people's
Right.
lives.
That's where the empathy, the deep empathy comes in, which is a pain point because you're compassionate, you
Right.
care, you want to help. And if you're intuitive and you see a warning, and then you have the deep empathy, then you want to warn and you want to take care, and you can do something about it. And sometimes you do have to reconcile yourself with the fact that the other person's not ready to hear it, right? They're not going to absorb it, or their fear is induced, and so then they panic. And so it becomes about being a messenger and how to send the message and how you do it in a way that is gentle, because sensitives also have the ability to be gentle, to be kind, to perceive what the other person needs, and then to relay it in a way that doesn't shock the other person's psyche. And that's our work as messengers, is to become adept at reading, how gracious can I be, and that's really caring for the human spirit, another human soul. So when it's done in a way that's compassionate, true compassion, sometimes we have to see compassion as detachment as well, and detached from the outcome, detached from the results, and convey a message even though we might not be believed or we might be ridiculed. So it is difficult. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and say that it's easy, because I've been in that seat many times, and you have to find a way to detach and let go and not get hooked into the empathy piece with the compassion, which is painful to yourself if you're not believed, or if the person doesn't receive it well, or if you lose friends. I've lost friends over this as
Yeah.
well. And that is very difficult as well, because you want to, have your community and have your tribe, your people around you.
And I love people as you do. One of the mantras that I tell myself when I come up against that situation is that I'm not responsible for the world. I'm not responsible for everybody's life. It's not
You're
my
not.
responsibility. It feels like it is, but it's not. I'm not responsible for it.
No. That's a good awareness that you're able to shift out of that, because the world is the world,
Mhm.
and we are messengers in a way to keep people safe in our societies, and knowing that sometimes has to be good enough.
Yeah, I don't think I'm there yet, but I'm working on it. At least I
Yeah,
have.
well, that's our work, right? We all have our work that we have to do.
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot of work. So I have a quote from your book. This innate ability to sense threats and ensure safety. I think we already covered most of that, but
Okay.
what I like about what you say also, and what you add to this, is that it's actually a physical event. It's not just all in your head or all in your heart or in your brain. There's actually a physical reaction. And I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I think that is like, okay, well, if it's physical, then it's probably more controllable than if it's just mental.
It is. It is a good way to describe it because if you're having the physical sensations, this is for the empaths who receive the felt sense. The felt sense is it's important to recognize it because it's invisible, right? But your body does respond through sensory neurons. They're one of the fastest messengers in the body. And those are oftentimes what give you the signals first. And they don't even go to your brain right away, they go to your spinal cord. And so it's all in the central nervous system where it's these immediate like vibrations, heat, temperature, hot, cold, buzzing, shaking. So there's all these sensations, I call them the warning sensations, that your body will let you know immediately. Pay attention. This is
Need to pay
important.
attention.
And then it's the mental quantum leap that happens that is so fascinating to me because then the mind tries to figure it out because the mind doesn't necessarily know, especially when the sensory neurons aren't going up into the mind. And then that goes into the brain versus the mind and how it's all connected. That's why I call it multisensory intelligence, because I've experienced this intelligence behind these vibrations and the tactile sensations that seems to be aware of what's going on and then the mind gets the picture of what's going on and the warning comes into the field and then you see it plain as day and you're like, holy shit. Right? How did I know that? How could I possibly know that? Well, we don't understand time. We don't necessarily understand the nature of time and how things flow. There are theories about it.
Yeah, maybe
But what
time
we
doesn't
do know from
exist.
my research, yeah, well, what we do know from my research is what I put in the book that you picked up on. We can sense danger. That is an instinct. That is a visceral human instinct, and sensitivity is connected to that, and that will always keep us safe no matter what. No matter if it's a relationship, a dangerous person, an unhealthy place, even to the extent of seeing a plane crash or a fire. And so it's the unknown of the universe, but the known is that we can pick up on these things. It's paying attention to them and trusting it that's difficult for sensitives.
Did you ever assume that everybody was like you? I mean, did you just think this was life and everybody?
Yes, hell yes. I mean, how would I know? But the thing that occurred to me, right, when I was going through like workshops, cultivation of the self trainings, mental health trainings, is I was always so deeply affected by
Right.
the content or the exercises that we did. And when we would go into like circle to share, I'd be like, well, I saw this mythical creature and he spoke to me, or there was an archetypal symbol. And everybody's just going,
What are you talking
what?
about?
How is that possible? And I was like, well, what are you
I
getting?
mean, you didn't
And
see
so I
that.
would document everything. Yeah, I was documenting everything. And not only that, I felt led to certain places, to certain teachings, to certain teachers. And I would explain to them, look, I saw this image of a centaur and it was symbolic and I found this book synchronistically in a bookstore that you talked about, the centaur, and they were like, you're in the right place. And so I always tell people that synchronistically, if you follow the synchronicities, then that's one of the other things that sensitives have that works for them. Their subconscious is picking up and is aware of the sensitive flow of life, which includes synchronicities. So I always include that as well because I had synchronicities all the time, and I would share that with other people, and they're like, no, no, sometimes, maybe deja vu. So that's kind of how I knew when I started to talk and communicate about what was happening with me. Other people didn't have the same experience. So that's when I started to go, there, something is happening that's different from what other people are experiencing. And that was a challenge for me because I wanted to share with everybody, hey, what was your latest synchronicity? Or, whatever. And it just was like, what? So I had to learn how to be discerning about who I shared with, what I shared, especially in my professional life. But I wrote the book because I wanted to share. I wanted people to understand you're not alone. And I think that's what the four gifts does is people can see themselves, sensitives can see themselves in those experiences that they might not be able to share with other people as openly.
Yeah, I think every person that's sensitive might have a little bit of all the four sensitivities, but have one
Yeah.
that's stronger than the others, right?
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
not very exclusive. So, do you still feel the pain when you get hit with something that you're not ready to process right away, especially with close personal relationships?
Yes. Yes, I do. I mean, there is nothing you can do about feeling it, right? I mean, we literally don't have a filter. You can do boundary work, you can do all kinds of visualizations and exercise, but sometimes, especially with grief, when grief is so new to somebody and they've lost someone dear to them, I pick up grief and I feel it in my body and I just feel the heaviness. But what I have been able to do over the last 20 years, especially through my counseling work and my advocacy with, housing and the homeless, is become very sharp, really sharp with my own skill set and develop my own skill set to be able to let the feelings and the emotions pass. Do I feel them? Do I get hit head on with it? Absolutely. Absolutely. That has never changed. And it won't change either through my whole life. And it might even get more profound as I get older, as I age and get into my 60s and my 70s. Because from what the elders say is it just continues to be present, that you feel so deeply. So I think that what I have been able to do is develop my coping mechanisms when I feel that onslaught, how to adapt with it and to not carry it. I used to get hooked into it and I would cry and I would feel sadness, but I don't
Feelings
want
all
to
the time.
feel that anymore.
Yeah,
I don't want to feel responsible for it anymore. I don't need to carry it. It's
right.
not helpful to me.
So you're saying that that part of it all entering you and feeling the pain is always going to be there, but it's about how you process that. Or,
That's right. And you get better at processing it. The more you see it and recognize it's not yours, it's a relief that it's not you, because that's where the craziness comes in, right? Where we're kind of labeled crazy because we feel these unexpected hits of emotional charges and it's like depth charges going off and it hits us and we're like, why do I feel this way? Oh my God. And then there's anxiety and sadness or even a lightened mood and happiness. And people are just like, wow, you're all over the map. But what you're doing is you're resonating at a frequency energetically with others and you're feeling it in your own body. And so while it might feel like craziness, it really is a gift. And that's where the sensory warnings come in to tell you this is unsafe because you're basically telepathically or energetically picking up on someone else's mind body state. And we have that through empathic awareness. Animals have it. Many different types of species have it. And so it is born into us. So it doesn't change. You can't get rid of it. That's kind of why I try to tell people it's the writing on the wall is you are going to be a deep feeler. How do you work with it? How do you use it in your life? How do you learn to love it instead of it being the bane of your existence and hating it? And really unliking yourself too as part of that. It's a beautiful thing.
yeah, so that's what I like about it. So you use it. How do you process it and then let it go in a positive way to help people? That's something you have to figure out once you process it the right way. Is there like,
Yes, and I go into it. I go
yeah,
into it ad nauseum in the book, and I identify the different types of empathy and the different types of empaths and the sensory warnings. I mean, it's like a little encyclopedia for sensitives to be able to find that chapter and then go, okay, this is what she's talking about, and then try it out. I have like thought experiments and physical exercises, yoga movements for the specific types of gifted sensitive, and I break down why. I go into herbal solutions. I mean, I throw everything out there so that the
yes,
sensitive can learn how they process, figure it out, because we're very, very, very adept at self awareness when we start looking into it. And then your intuition helps you figure it out. That's the thing that I say, just trust your intuition, be guided, use what you're being guided to. That's your solution. Because I think sensitivity shows us the way that we need to heal ourselves so that we can balance. It's an innate or an inborn mechanism for self-healing so we can keep ourselves healthy. I don't have any proof for it. It's just
right.
my own personal belief from all the studies I've done in my own experience.
So here is the big key. If you ever talk to someone who says, I don't have the proof for it, but I just sensing and all that, you're talking to either an empath or intuitive or something like that, because it always
Yeah.
starts with the feeling, and then you're talking. So, like you said, not everybody has a teacher or a guide or someone to help them deal with it. So, how do they get a hold of your book or join your workshop or basically get in touch with you?
Well, I'm online. The book is Four Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. You can find it. It's out there. You can find it maybe at your local bookseller. It's in Barnes and Noble, it's in Walmart, Target. Now, if they don't have it, you can ask them and they'll get it for you. But you could also get it at Amazon. Some people are upset with Amazon right now, so I don't put them
Yeah,
on the leaderboard, but
a lot
it's
of people.
where it is. And then it might be coming to your local library. I just saw that it's in the Baltimore local library there. And so I'm super excited that it's going to libraries now.
Right.
And then you can find me if you want to do the test. I have a test for you to discover what your gift is. You do the test, and then I send you an email of what your gift is. And then I invite you, if you have any questions, to do my free, like 15-minute post test intuitive connection. And so we go through this connection on Zoom, and you ask me questions about your sensitivity, any kind. I answer them, and then I feel like I'm really taking care of my readers that way. My website is Inspired Potentials. Inspired Potentials is what I tell people because people don't know how to sound out Courtney Marchesani. So thank
I
goodness I
think,
have a business that's
yeah.
easy to say.
And I also figured it out. So if you guys want to know how to spell Marcasani, it's March E Sani. That's how I figure it. Because March is my month.
Yeah.
March is easy to remember. E E
What's your birthday?
March
What's
7.
your birthday? What's your sign?
March 7, Pisces,
Oh, you're a Pisces. Very cool.
which makes it
Very
double
cool.
sensitivity because I'm a water sign on top of it.
Oh, and I bet your imaginative creativity with those elements is off the charts. Off the charts.
Yeah, it
Are
was.
you an artist?
Yeah, I'm a writer, and I write
Uh-huh.
poems, and I write a lot of fictional, made-up stories, and a lot of true stories too.
Beautiful.
So my true stories tend
Beautiful.
to focus on releasing my pain. When I write it out, it helps me.
Mhm.
I think my biggest therapist was my writing growing up. Probably wouldn't have survived without it. Because when my father passed away when I was 8, and he was the center of my life, and my life literally froze. Like I couldn't function like a deer. When they see the headlight, they just freeze and they watch. That's how
Yeah.
I became at age 8. And it took a really long time because nobody understood what was going on. And my mother ran around from doctor to doctor, but they were all like, well, I even went back to bedwetting at age 8. That's how frozen I was.
Mhm.
And they were like, well, don't give her tea at night, or like some crazy solutions. So the way I healed myself then was by just writing everything down. And that has stayed with me. And I think it saved my life, and it helped me figure out a lot of things. But
It's the most underrepresented healing art form is writing expressive art. Expressive art. And you probably could resonate with that in the book. And maybe you haven't gotten there yet, but I talk about expressive art as a healing modality and
yeah,
how powerful it is and how you can do it yourself and you don't need a doctor to do expressive art yourself.
right. And I guess I was led as
Good
a
for
child.
you. Did you keep that writing? Did you hold on to it?
Not all of it, but too much of it for sure. As much as I could
I'm
because
sure you don't like want to go back there and look at it, but someday after you've gone through, the eye of the needle and you pass through it, it becomes less energetically charged. It can be cathartic to go back and read the process that you went to, your soul. When you go into that artistic writing mode, that's your soul. I feel like that's when we're closest to our soul than ever before when we're seeking that healing. Our soul is always there
yeah,
to help us
amazing.
through
It's
it.
so
And so
amazing.
writing and the arts, are the soul container helping you to move through things in an artistic way.
Right. And it just comes out. You don't really plan it. You can't make an outline for it. It just is out
No,
there. And
you
the next
can't.
thing for me, I'll write and write. And all of a sudden my poem comes out. And once the poem is out, I know I've completed it. And
Yeah.
I did that the other day because I was having some very dark things around here. And I ended up with a poem, and I read it to my one of my coaches, And she said, "Oh, you were casting a spell. This is actually casting a spell." Like, okay,
Spell casting.
I'm
Interesting.
not into spell
Well,
casting.
I do think that it's like channeling when you go into the artistic literary mind or the dramatic creative wellspring. I mean, that's where the mythology comes from. That's where the muses come from. That's where the inspiration and the spark comes from. And inspiration is to be in spirit,
Right. And this is, and
right? In the divinity, the divine spark of the creative spirit is totally healing, and it's revivifying to be connected to the soul in such a way.
yeah, and I think that's why your book is so amazing and so important, because it kind of takes everything you have inside and you put it on paper. So it's almost releasing it from the inside. And then when people read that, they're like, oh, scientific proof. And this is how you handle it. I think,
Scientific proof. Yes. Yes,
wow,
scientific proof.
yeah, I'm not that
Yeah,
crazy.
like my dream would be if I could take a mathematic solution and make it an elegant, artistic, mathematical proof. That would be like the ultimate achievement, to take all that we just discussed and all those art forms and make it mathematically possible in an elegant math, like physics or something, to show the soul communicates in this way, and this is the mathematical proof.
I think
God,
in a
wouldn't
way,
that be a
in a
wonderful
way,
thing?
I think you did do it in the book, because math is science, and you connected the research, the physical and the mental and the emotional. You haven't touched so much on the spiritual, but I think that would be the next level. But I think you
It's
did.
in the last chapter. It's in the
Oh, okay.
last
Yeah, I didn't get
chapter.
there.
I go into a new soul medicine, and that's kind of like my visionary future work, which could become a second book, like you're suggesting, just the spiritual aspect, the spiritual healing piece.
Right, the non-physical, everything that's non-physical, spiritual,
Yeah,
soul.
the non-physical.
Yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
fantastic. But in a way, you did do the math on this. You did take it. You did the math without numbers, which in itself is almost impossible to do. And somehow you
You're
were.
gonna make me cry, Tippy. You're gonna make me cry. Have you ever seen it was the movie with Tom Cruise and Cuba Gooding, and Cuba Gooding is at the end of the movie. He's the football player, and he said, "I said I wasn't gonna cry. I said I wasn't gonna cry." He's like crying because he's listening to his whole life story and the triumph of the human spirit, right? And he got the big contract. What the hell is the name of that movie?
I probably saw, because
Ah,
I probably saw every Tom Cruise movie, so I probably saw it.
it was the
But
one with Show Me the Money. He was a sports agent. Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. Yeah.
I was gonna be upset with myself if that didn't come around on the ticker tape. I was waiting for it. Boom.
Yeah, he came in. Oh, you got it. Yeah,
Came it.
yeah. And I love that line, because I always feel like I'm going to cry, but I don't cry anymore. I used to cry too much. I don't cry anymore. But
Me
sometimes
too.
you need to cry to really seal the deal, to finish the story. You need to let it go. You need to let you
It's
to,
good for the soul. It's good for the soul.
yeah, absolutely. So let me see if I got it right. Your website is inspiredpotentials.com with an S at the end, or without?
That's right.
With an S at the end?
With an S, inspiredpotentials.com. All you have to do is type in inspired potentials and it'll come up. I'm the first.
Oh, wow, great. And does that is that website include the test that you were talking about that you
It's
finished?
right at the top. Yep, it's right at the top. It says find your gift, and then I send the email. I go through each test specifically. It's all hand done, old school, old timer,
Wow.
and I write it out. I
All
mean, the
right.
content is the same for the gifts that are, the same, but sometimes I see emerging patterns in the way people respond. And so because I am a researcher, I'm taking all that information and I want to let people know, "Hey, look, this is a new pattern that's emerging and you seem to fall into this category." And so I do a personal touch. And I also ask, if you want to connect with me, let's have a chat. So I leave it, close, intimate connection.
And data research too. So it's wonderful. So great. So the book, everybody, you can go out and get it if you really want to be inspired. It's called Four Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. And if you want to take the test, which I also highly recommend, it go to inspiredpotentials.com and find and go under find your gift. And I think we couldn't give them any more than that at this point. That's a lot of tools, a lot
It's
of
a lot,
information, and it's a lot. And
a
and
lot.
especially to wake up people to the fact that they are sensitive if they never knew why they were so sensitive and what it really means. This is an eye opener for sure.
It's life changing. It's life changing. And then once you find out, you go back and look on your whole life and you kind of recast. You recast all these experience under the umbrella of sensitivity, and it's life changing, and
It-
everything makes sense, and it's beautiful, and it's elegant, and it's nice to know. It's a nice thing to know. And then you kind of live your life a certain way after you figure it out.
Yeah, I could say for me, the past 5 years, which was when I found out what those problems were and why I was running around trying to fix people, like literally make it my mission in life. I have to fix that person because they're in so much pain, as if he was my own. And when I found out, it was such a huge release and such a huge change that I can't even begin to explain. And this book actually will do more than that. It wouldn't just identify it for you, it will give you tools and facts and figures on how to do it. So thank you so much for writing it, Courtney. And thank you so much for joining us today. I am
Thank
so happy.
you. Thank you for a delightful conversation. It was lovely. I feel my heart just opening up. Thank you.
And I'm definitely going to go read the last chapter right now of the
The
book.
last chapter, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. I want to give you the heads up because one of the things that you asked me about that's so important, I write about a little girl that I worked with at a school in Seattle. I want you to read that story about her. It's short, but it touches on what you talked about perceiving danger and warnings. And she was probably in fifth grade. So I wanted to give you that as a prompting. So when you get to that chapter, you'll go, oh, I'm interested in this.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you too much because I want you to read it and have you
I'm
experience
gonna read
it
it
for the first
anyway.
time without me
Yeah,
telling
I'm
you.
gonna read it anyway, no matter what you give me, because I've already read most of it. I didn't read it word for word. I kind of skimmed through the whole thing, and I caught
Yeah,
a lot of highlights and a few little stories. But I'm definitely going to spend more time doing it because not only because I think it's a great book, but I also think personally for a sensitive, it's going to give me information and tools that I probably would have been much better off if I had it in second grade. But better late than
yeah.
never.
That's what I think. I think we would all have been able to had a lot less pain and suffering had we known when we were in the second grade.
Exactly. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Let's do that. Let's make that change so kids nowadays can know and their parents will know when they're in the second grade how to help them and treat their sensitivity early.
Oh, that's a great idea to put it into the education system.
It's my wish. It's one of my wishes. Yeah, it's one of my intentions that it spreads to parents who can go, "Oh my goodness, look at this."
Are you in the education system or do you work with parents?
I had an early education minor when I was in the University of Montana, but I didn't go forward with it. But I do champion projects that are school projects through friends and alliances, and I stay tuned into all the special ed laws. And yeah, so I'm in touch with it. I just don't work in a school.
Yeah, which is probably better than working within the school
Yeah.
system because it's very difficult to
I
do.
don't want to conform. I
Yeah,
don't want to conform anymore.
yeah, yeah. That's the whole other part of it, conforming and molding yourself into what society wants you to be.
What they want us to be. We need to be who we are from birth now. That's the evolution piece. We need to be accepted and brought up in a way that we don't have to socially conform anymore.
That's a great finishing statement for this interview and for this talk because being yourself is saving your own life.
It is.
And
It's life-saving.
and so if anything else happens and you do write that book that we talked about the soul, definitely let me be the first one to know about it.
I will. I will. I'll let you know right away. I'm having thoughts about it. I've been pondering it. I have some ideas, so I will let you know right away. when I get it together.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for
Okay.
joining us today with this important topic. If you like what we spoke about and if you get any benefit, don't forget to subscribe and to share, but especially to share with people that, as many people as you can, because you just never know who's the one that's going to pick up and change their life and transform their life. Have a wonderful day, Courtney.
Thank you.
Bye bye. And before I go here, let me just show you this is my book on Amazon. It's called Wake Up and Plan for Roses. It is about planning your life consciously because we actually plan our life unconsciously if we don't have an active plan. So might as well make it active, might as well make it the way you like it. So if you want the book, it's Wake Up and Plan for Roses on Amazon.